now under Russian control. Airstrikes and rocket fire have hit the key eastern city of Kharkiv, where there are reports of street fighting after Russian paratroops landed there overnight. Viktor Shepelev is in the city with his wife and 3 daughters.
We have our own cellar where we hide when it's too loud outside. We still have internet, electricity, water, food. As far as I know, people are helping each other, and the Kharkiv is Ukrainian, but there are a lot of bombings from airplanes with ballistic missiles, with reactive missiles. So, yeah, it's a bit scary.
MPs gave the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK a standing ovation in the Commons as he watched Prime Minister's questions from the public gallery. Boris Johnson announced that the Disasters Emergency Committee was starting an appeal for Ukraine, with every pound donated by the public matched by the government. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said there was more the government could do to crack down on Russian oligarchs.
Putin thinks that we're too corrupted to do the right thing and put an end to it. Does the Prime Minister agree that this House and this country stands united in our support for Ukraine, and now is the time to sanction every oligarch and crack open every shell company so we can prove Putin wrong?
Yeah. Mr Johnson said the UK should be proud of the actions it had taken against President Putin and his wealthy supporters. Emergency staff in hospitals in Northern Ireland are doing all they can to help very sick patients and respect the dignity of older people who need care. That's according to the President of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. Our health correspondent, Mary-Louise Connolly, reports.
The Royal College of Emergency Medicine says patients' safety and their dignity should always come first. But in a system that's broken, sometimes it proves difficult. Yesterday, the South Eastern Trust confirmed that a woman had died in the emergency department despite attempts to resuscitate her. She'd spent 8 hours outside the building in an ambulance. The President of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine here, Paul Kerr, says while he won't comment on this particular case, he says staff are doing all they can.
Sometimes some of these patients, in any case, are in end-of-life situations, and staff that is, are unable to tend to them appropriately, and there is a lack of dignity and a loss of dignity in these situations.
The South Eastern Health Trust says it's saddened by what happened, but the woman did receive one-to-one care, including her time spent in the ambulance.
Police have started a murder investigation after a man died following a stabbing in West Belfast. Our reporter Catherine Morrison is at the scene.
There's little sign of what happened here last night in this small residential development just off the Stewartstown Road in West Belfast. A police presence remains at the scene as detectives carry out house-to-house inquiries. The police say they were called here shortly before midnight last night. Paramedics were called too. There had been reports that a man had been stabbed. Despite their efforts, he was pronounced dead a short time later. One neighbour said he believed the people who lived in the house at the centre of the investigation moved in around a year ago, a mother and her young children. One woman has been arrested and is currently in police custody.
A plan to send firefighters to cardiac emergencies in rural parts of Northern Ireland has been stalled after legal issues were raised by the Fire Brigades Union. The scheme was set up after campaigning by the family of a 5-year-old girl from County Antrim who died in December. It would have meant firefighters would have responded to cardiac arrest calls when the ambulance service was under pressure. Irish authorities have issued a public health warning after a radioactive device was stolen in Drogheda. They believe the thieves weren't aware of the risks it poses. Here's our Dublin correspondent Shane Harrison.
The Troxer nuclear moisture density gauge, which contains a radioactive source, was stolen from a parked van in the Highlands area of Drogheda sometime between 6 o'clock on Monday evening and 6:30 yesterday morning. The gauge is used by engineers to measure the density and moisture content in construction materials. The Environmental Protection Agency says the nearer someone is to the radiation source and the longer the period they are exposed to it, the greater the risk of developing cancer. Gardaí have appealed to the thieves to let them know where the device is for everybody's sake.
The lunchtime sport now with Michael McNamee.
Competitors from Russia and Belarus will be allowed to take part as neutrals at the Winter Paralympics, which start this weekend in Beijing. But Russian Formula One drivers have been banned from competing in the UK by the National Motorsport Authority. Roman Abramovich's future as Chelsea owner is in doubt after a Swiss billionaire claimed he's been offered the chance to buy the club. Tonight, Chelsea will try to avoid an FA Cup upset at Championship side Luton Town. That game will be live on BBC One and BBC Radio 5 Live. Northern Ireland's teenage defender Conor Bradley could be back in cup duty for Liverpool against Premier League strugglers Norwich City. In Scotland, Premiership leader Celtic face Stephen Robinson's St Mirren. Champions Rangers are at St Johnstone. In motorcycling, Michael Dunlop will ride a PBM Ducati at this year's Northwest 200 and Isle of Man TT. And at 2:30 at Ravenhill, Campbell College will meet Wallace High School in the second Schools Cup semi-final. Methody await in the final.
Thanks, Michael. And Angie has the weather.
Dull this afternoon with a moderate to fresh southerly breeze and occasional spells of rain. Some moderate bursts likely in places, maybe more so towards the east. Not too chilly though, with highs of 8 to 10 Celsius. It remains cloudy and wet at times through tonight, with some heavier pulses of rain moving through. A milder night with lows of around 6 Celsius, and the breeze will gradually ease.
William Crawley with Talkback on BBC Radio Ulster.
Welcome back, everybody. 6.5 minutes past 1. We are going to return to some of our domestic politics now with the news that MPs are to get a pay rise from the 1st of April. They will get a pay rise of £2,212, more than £2,000. And that means that an MP's basic salary will go up to just over £84,000, £84,144 to be precise. That's a 2.7% rise. It'll come in the same week that millions of workers, of course, see their wages hit by national insurance increases. And many of you have been saying to us over many, many weeks, you know what, I haven't had a pay rise in years. My salary's been frozen. My wages have been frozen. Everything's going up. More prices for everything. The oil stuff and what's happening in Ukraine is going to make that even worse. So the Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the Labour leader Keir Starmer have both said that MPs should not get that pay rise this year, but their pay, of course, is set by an independent body, and that was the importance of making it an independent body, to take it away from the politicians. You might say to yourself, when is it a good time to give a politician a pay rise? There's never a good time to get a pay rise. The optics are always bad, aren't they? So, question for you is, do you support this? A pay rise of just over £2,000 for all of our members of Parliament. 03030 80 55 55. Let's get your voice on the radio. We'll line you up right now. You can text any questions or comments to 81771. Sam Ashworth-Hayes is with us, Director of Studies at the Henry Jackson Society, the think tank, and Felicity Huston, who incidentally chaired the appointment panel for the very first Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, which is the body, that independent body, that sets these salary increases. Well, welcome to both of you. Good to have you with us. Sam, you think this is appropriate, do you?
Yeah, I mean, my point of view has been for quite a long time that you get the MPs you pay for, and we aren't really paying enough to attract people who are doing really, really well in their respective fields. And obviously, if you look at this £2,000 pay rise, that's, as you say, 2.7%. If you look at inflation in real terms, in terms of what that's going to buy you in terms of goods and services, that's going to be a big cut.
So it's really, Sam, your line's very poor. It's going in and out. Would you, let me see if we can get you on a better line just to be clearer, because I'm only hearing half of what you're saying. But what I heard Sam saying was you get the MPs you pay for, and this 2.7% increase is actually a pay cut when you look at where inflation is at the minute. So we haven't actually given them a pay increase. We've given them £2,000 more, but that in real terms is not an increase in their salary. Felicity.
Well, I'm sorry, but I think anybody trying to defend this at the moment is just defending the indefensible. I know there are all the intellectual arguments for why our MPs should get paid more, and certainly if you are a QC, as our previous Attorney General demonstrated, you're taking a massive pay cut if you just work in Parliament. But that's not why people do it. And I think given the circumstances we're in at the moment, I think they should all be saying thank you very much, but no thank you, we'll just stick with what we're on at the moment.
Do you think there's ever an appropriate time for an MP to get a pay rise? Are we actually saying MPs should never, ever, ever, ever get a pay rise.
No, you can't do that either, because there is the genuine cost of living. And inflation at the moment is going to be a massive issue. I mean, I can remember inflation back in the 70s in double figures, up around 20% and things, and interest rates, 14%. We're nowhere near that, but it is getting there. And unfortunately, one of the big drivers is wage increases. That increases inflation terribly. But I'm sorry, whatever the circumstances, no MP is on the breadline. They're not out in a cardboard box under Waterloo arches. They're all right. They don't go into it for the money, as they're always telling us at great length. They do it because they believe in public service, which I actually think is the case with 95% of them. So it's not about the money. And I think this is an opportunity to not only say we're all in this together, which I have to say I haven't seen a sign of over the past 2 years, but here's an opportunity to now say we are in this together, and here is us demonstrating we are. We won't take the money, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And that's the political optics are really astray, as you say. Sam, welcome back. I hope we've got you in a better line there.
Yeah, I hope is this working?
Oh, that's so much better. Yeah. I mean, Felicity is making interesting points here. I mean, she doesn't oppose the idea of paying MPs appropriately or even giving them increases. But, look at what people are going through right now. Shouldn't we all go through that together, including MPs?
So I think there's a really interesting argument here, which is that the time when you really want the most talented people to be MPs is when matters are particularly tough. And if you turn around and say, actually, look, we're going to give you real-time pay cuts when external events driving cost of living, when external events are driving things to be more difficult, you make it less attractive as a field. We're paying, I think at the moment, we're paying $82,000 a year, just under £2,000 pay increase scheduled. That puts you in the top 5% of the population, which is a high figure, but it's, that's 1 in 20 people. We're not looking for 1 in 20 people. We're looking for sort of 650 people or so to make decisions that are going to determine how wealthy our country is. You can earn comfortably more than that in law, in medicine, in finance. You can earn more than that in your local council working in a housing department. So we're not actually paying them very much relative to the absolute top tier of talent. We're paying them quite well.
By your statistical analysis there, we'd be paying them millions each if there's only 650 of them out of a population of nearly 70 million people.
Well, so this is actually an interesting point, because if you think about the consequences of the decisions they make, they generate or destroy sometimes so much value through the laws they enact. If you could make a policy which improves, say, average earnings in the UK by about 0.14%, so we're not talking about very much here, say you have slightly better infrastructure, you find a way of making the labour market function better. If you could do that, you could pay each and every one of those 650 MPs £1 million a year. You would raise enough tax revenue to cover that bill, and you would still leave everyone better off. So because the decisions they make are so consequential, the value is very, very high.
What do you think, I mean, to draw us back into real politics, what do you think is an appropriate salary for an MP? How does one benchmark something like that?
That's a fascinating question. I would like to pay them substantially more than we do now, because we have this issue of people who want to go into politics, people who are interested in politics, and they turn around and say, actually, I can't do this, I can't make this work financially, I can't keep paying my kids' school fees, I can't keep paying. So I would be comfortable with paying, let's say 160 as a starting point.
£160?
We'll double it, and we'll hopefully get somewhat better chance.
160 grand for an MP. All the MPs are coughing now as they're listening to this and thinking, wow. What would your benchmark be, Felicity? Because like £82,000 a year where they are at present, it's a lot of money, obviously, in our society. But there are school headmasters who earn more than that.
Oh, there are. I mean, as your other contributor said, there's a lot of people in the public sector who earn a great deal more than that. We must remember that that's 80,000 some odds, and then they have their expenses as well. Which, I mean, one of the things I've been
office costs and things, isn't it?
Yes, they have it. Yes, and also that stuff, and that's all covered, as well. It doesn't come out of the 88,000 that they're earning. That is all covered. It's the same here with our MLAs. And I've been struck. We have seen out the inside.
What do you think they should be paid?
Oh well, that's 100? Maybe something like that. But I mean, there is no shortage of people wanting to be MPs.
Yes.
Every constituency in the country has, for those who are like possibility of winning, has a competitive selection process. There, it's not, if we talk about supply and demand and we want to bring in better people, well, there are lots of people who want to be MPs. So it's not about the money. I'm fascinated by the idea of paying.
Well, they tell us it's not about the money.
Well, yes. And I mean, it isn't, because otherwise we wouldn't have people wanting to come forward. But I'm fascinated by the idea that we have a sort of performance-related pay for MPs, that if they could actually make the country run better, well, indeed, we might feel better about it. But while we're facing the situation we have at the moment, I think to be looking at a massive pay increase, well, it's not a massive, but
the other way you could do it, Sam, is MPs only get a pay rise when the national average income goes up.
I think that would be an absolutely dreadful idea. Sorry. The problem with this is if you link MPs' pay to what's going on in the economy more generally, you end up with sort of pay increases when things are going well, which is great, and then either static or falling pay when things are going badly, which is obviously a sort of element of risk which they don't want, and which is going to turn people off it. But also, if you do it the way you sort of suggested, where short-term increases lead to increase in value, there's a sort of incentive to try and have things run hot over the very short term.
It's often what we do in the corporate world, isn't it, Felicity?
Yes, and I mean, the thing is, it's not a normal economy we're talking about here of supply and demand in MPs. It is a specialist type of work. In fact, they wouldn't tell you it's not work, it's
They're public service workers,
Exactly, of a very particular type. Say there's no shortage of people wanting to do it. And, they are living relatively comfortable lifestyles.
Sam thinks there's a shortage of good people who should do it.
Well, maybe they just don't want to do it. Once again, do we think that the calibre of the current intake is not great? I have to say, actually, I think we are not well served by the calibre we have at the moment. But whether that's an outworking of salary or actually other things like them all having to do PPA at Oxford before they and then working in a think tank, and then getting into Parliament. I think there's a much bigger issue about MPs who've had no life experience.
Incidentally, we've got some of our MPs have already said that they will not be taking this additional money and this extra £2,000 they will be donating to charities. One MP in England has said that she told her voters when she was being elected that she would take only £35,000 and always give the additional amount away to charity, and she says she will continue to do that as well. So different MPs approach this in different ways. Let's take some of your calls. We're talking to Sam Ashworth-Hayes from the Henry Jackson Society and Felicity Huston, who, as I say, I can introduce Felicity in so many different ways. She does so many different things, but in this case, it's appropriate to say that she was on the appointment panel for the first czar of this independent body. Yes. Let's put it that way. James in Newtonards. Welcome, James. Are you for an increase in MP salaries?
I'm aiming at this very short comment, actually. I'm aiming at especially at Northern Ireland MPs. Any MP who accepts that rise will not get my vote. So if they want my vote, decline the rise.
Will you ever know, though? I mean, those MPs who come out, and a couple have come out, haven't they, today, and told us they will not be taking this pay rise, they'll be giving the rest away, James. That's fine, they've made that statement. The other MPs, they may just not tell you.
Well, if they don't tell us, then they won't get the vote. I'll assume that they are taking
You'll assume the worst.
Yes.
So I take it from that you don't think it's appropriate to give them a pay rise?
Not in today's circumstances.
Right. You're not opposed to it in every situation, I assume, James, but just at the minute, what we're going through right now.
That's right. When they're taking pensioners and making them pay, people over 75 years of age, and making them pay the full TV licence, that doesn't equate to MPs getting a raise. Stripping off money from retired people and giving it to those who are very well paid.
James, thank you very much. Somebody else here texting and pointing out, please point out, national insurance is going up, but remember, MPs pay national insurance too, so some of that money, that extra money you're getting, will come back to the Exchequer in terms of national insurance payments. What would that be? An extra $2,000. You're an accountant.
Oh, God, I haven't got my tax tables.
How much would that be? You're probably talking about 40% of it?
Well, no, not for national insurance.
What is it, 27%?
Well, it depends whether you're an employer or an employee and all that sort of thing. But, it will come back soon. But, the national insurance increase is a regressive thing. It's hitting those on lower pay most. They're suddenly finding themselves paying something they weren't. It was a terrible mistake on the part of Sunak as well.
You're probably both agreed on that, Sam, aren't you? But let's not get bogged down in that one. Jim is in Lisburn. Hello, Jim.
Hi, William. How's it going?
Welcome. What do you think of this?
I'm in favour of it, I have to say. I think they deserve a pay rise, but they shouldn't be on their own at the moment.
All right,
We're all in the situation where we need a pay rise.
All right, so MPs have this independent body, and they're public sector workers essentially, so it sets their pay rise. A lot of people work in the private sector and their pay rise is set by their companies, and then you've got MPs voting sometimes on public sector wages, and a lot of them are frozen right now. So what are you proposing, Jim? Are you saying all public sector workers should get a pay rise?
I think public sector and private should all be considered for pay rises because, I myself work in the private sector. I haven't had a pay rise in 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been too bad this last while because I haven't had to commute to work.
Right, of course.
I'm working from home. But now offices are starting to say, no, we want you back in.
Yeah.
So up go the costs of commuting and parking.
What were you paying every week in parking?
I'd have probably paid about 40 quid a week.
It's nightmarish, isn't it? It's a nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's not to mention the fuel costs and wear and tear on the vehicle.
Yeah.
But, coming back to it, that MP's salary rise, at least 50% of that will go straight back to the Exchequer between the cost of income tax and the national insurance contribution. Over 50% of that will go straight back to the Exchequer. So it's not really a pay rise of £2,000 at all.
How much do you think an MP should be paid, Jim?
I think they should be in the same league as our GPs, personally.
Well, that's a big spectrum, actually, isn't it? You get some very well-paid GPs and some not so very well-paid GPs.
Well, I thought there was a standard for GPs, to be honest.
No, I used to think that too. But of course, GPs run practices, which are businesses.
True.
And so put a figure on it. What do you reckon? 80 grand, 90 grand, 100 grand?
I think around about 100 grand.
You think 100?
It's a big commitment for anybody who maybe has a career in another business to give that up and maybe go into politics where they may only get a short tenure, they may only get a couple of years and then be back out again.
Yeah.
So it's a big commitment to do that, and I think that should be recognised.
And they get a payoff.
And if they're not
lose.
good at their job, they won't get re-elected.
You get thousands of a payoff when you lose the election,
Oh, I know you do, yeah.
You don't get that if you lose your job as a nurse.
Pension rates as well. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Well,
really appreciate
we either
it.
have to have them or we don't. One of the two.
Well, that's a different debate, isn't it? Fred's in Dromore. Hi, Fred.
When you take this figure, I would say it's an increase of possibly 4%.
Say that again, Fred.
When you get, if that's over £2,000 there, that's about 50% of the average, the basic pension. And that is disgraceful. Pension too should be index linked.
Right, so you're making a comparison with pensions. You're saying it's not fair because pensioners are struggling and MPs shouldn't be getting this.
That's right, because you take during COVID, pensioners got no rise at all. And you take energy prices, they're going up. That would not make any difference to MPs.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Fred. He's fully against it. And many people texting on what they're earning in terms of pensions and state provisions. And you get much better in other countries. There's no question about that. When you look across Europe, look at the pensions you get in places way across Europe, and the UK's pension is very low by European standards, and benefits as well are very low by European standards. Wayne is in Warren Point. Wayne, you're for this increase in MP salaries. Tell us why.
I don't mind, William, if they get a good, sufficient pay rise, to be quite honest with you, as long as they do away with expense accounts. Their expense accounts usually outweigh more than they get in wages. Even our own MLAs in Northern Ireland, they could be, but their expense accounts are absolutely nuts.
All right.
They end up twice their salary.
Okay, let's just pause on that. It's an important question, Wayne. Don't run away. But Felicity, tell us about MPs' expenses and how that works.
Oh, well, I'm not on top of all the details, but can I assure you, Wayne, they're not claiming for duck houses and moat cleaning anymore. You might remember 10 odd years ago under Gordon Brown, the whole scandal came out about what was going on, and that was an absolute disgrace. And the attempt was made to separate their expenses and their salaries from themselves, because previously they were marking their own homework and bullying the staff terribly in the House of Commons about their expenses and so on. So the idea was the Parliamentary Standards Authority would agree what suitable expenses were and their salaries, and they're allowed to claim for accommodation in London if they don't live in London and that sort of thing, because otherwise they can't afford to actually do their job. They have expenses for staff and they're maintaining an office just like our MLAs do here. Yeah. And there are other bits and pieces. I'm not on top of all the fine detail of it.
So these are business expenses and they have to provide documentation.
Yes, they do. But
spending.
The most interesting thing is how badly the MPs still behave about this. They still resent deeply being monitored by this independent organisation. You know, they feel that don't you realise who I am? Goes on. I gather all the time with the staff, even after all these years. So they don't feel they're overcompensated, even if we may feel so in some areas.
So that is, Wayne, if you were working in any job in life and you get your salary, but if you're working for a company and you have to travel on company business, or if you're working in a company's office, nobody's expecting you to pay the rent out of your salary for the company's office, right? That's how expenses are meant to work with MPs.
I know, William, but some of them are really, really ridiculous. I've seen and I've heard things like going out for dinner and they'll be sitting down in the top-class restaurant and charging for...
Oh, this sort of thing, 50 quid for a breakfast in London somewhere, that sort of thing.
It's really, really ridiculous, William. You know, some of them that get away with. And, there is fair enough. Some of our MLAs even here travelled back and forward to England for accommodation, pay silly money for it.
I get it. I see what you're saying. You're not opposed to expenses, but you think some people are taking the hand out of it. Appreciate it, Wayne. Incidentally, on the salaries, the current salary for an MP is roughly 82. It's 81,932 at the minute. But in 2010, do you know what the salary for an MP was? 65 grand. So it's gone from 65 grand up to 82 grand in that period of 12 years. And that's quite a hike, isn't it?
And that's when it was separated from the MPs settling their own salaries. You know, that's since they handed it over
as a consequence of it,
to an independent organisation. That's perhaps the most interesting thing about the huge increase in that circumstance.
Here's Norman in Bangor. Hi, Norman.
Good afternoon, William. Isn't it wonderful? The MP's getting a £2,000 pay raise, and I'll probably get £3 a week on my pension. And I have to pay for all my energy bills, my car, my food for my house, my gas bills, on a tenth of what these MPs are getting for their wages. Plus they're getting their expenses with families at food banks who can't afford to heat their homes or feed their families. And there these are, getting £2,000 of a raise.
Yeah.
We're living in a divided society, William, an unequal society where the rich are getting richer and the poor are poor, and all these sanctions against Russia. They're not.
We're going to have to take. I'm not going back to Russia. We're going to stick with this one, Norman. But thank you very much, Lawrence. Let me bring in Lawrence. Quick comment from Lawrence. Where are you on this, Lawrence?
I didn't get the gentleman's name when he was talking about sort of 160 odd grand for.
That's Sam. Sam's still there. Have a word with Sam. Yeah, go ahead.
Just the point that I had to make was that if somebody, whether they work in medicine or whether they work in whatever field it is, if they're insisting that they need that sort of money to go into politics, maybe they don't have the constituents' views and interests at heart. I mean, from my point of view as a voter, give me anybody that's working in a normal trade. I mean, I'm a teacher. Give me somebody that's an ex-teacher.
But do you not think, Lawrence? I mean, look, the Vice Chancellor of Queen's University is earning 300 grand, right? Twice what the Prime Minister is paid. Twice. Does that make sense to you?
No, not.
Well, you've got chief executives of local councils in England who are earning £500,000 a year. Some not all of them, but some chief executives are earning £500,000 a year. Now, I'm not taking a side on this. I'm simply saying, is it the case, Lawrence, that when it comes to our MPs or indeed the Prime Minister, it is such a politically toxic thing to even talk about the salary that we end up with politicians who are earning much less than other parts of society?
No, but as the lady was saying, there are a lot of people that are waiting in the wings that would like to fill those positions.
That's absolutely true.
And me personally, I think that they'd be more willing to fight for the sort of views that me as a working class person has than somebody who's looking for 160 grand to do the job.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Well said. Sam, what do you say?
So I think it's a really interesting point he raises, because we talk about this willingness to do the job, and there are a lot of people who are willing to do the job. It's whether they are the right people. So, you can look at the Royal Statistical Society, which put out a really interesting survey this year, where they got a bunch of MPs, asked them some questions and said, look, you flip a coin twice, what's the probability of you getting heads? And about half of them could answer that correctly. There are a lot of very sort of quantitatively minded people, talented people, who look, let's be honest, politics is an unpleasant job. It's aggressive.
But you don't want to give an IQ test to somebody to become Prime Minister, do you? Or an MP?
I'm not saying we should give an IQ test to someone to be Prime Minister, but I'm saying we should sort of be looking for some of those skills that we don't have that pay very well. If you have quantitative training, if you did economics or physics or one of these
isn't it?
degrees, you can go and work in finance or coding and you can make a lot of money.
Of course you can. But you've chosen not to by becoming an MP. Isn't that the point, Felicity? You've chosen not to.
I mean, they
are choosing not to.
Yeah.
They tell us it's a vacation. They want to make things better. And that's what they're doing. They're not wanting to be a coder or a physicist or whatever. They're wanting to do something for the greater public good, and it's a very special job.
Felicity Huston, Sam Ashworth-Hayes, thanks to both of you. That's it from us. Here's Hugo.
Hugo Duncan on BBC Radio Ulster and BBC Sounds.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Streetband. Why did you smile?
Left without a sign or warning.
Patricia's singing.
I'm still holding some questions in my mind. In case you might ask how I'm doing.
How you doing?
Well, here's what I think you're gonna find.
What?
I'm tired of moping, hoping, waiting on the telephone. I don't know by now that you ain't gonna come back home. I'm going dancing, romancing. I'm gonna love every boy inside. I might worry tomorrow, but I'll paint the town tonight.
You're very welcome to the programme. It's Hugo here to 3 o'clock. It's your uncle. Have the kettle on for 2 o'clock. Cream buns are here. And Joan's got a smile on her face.
Well, I found me a honky-tonk that loves me. And I'll close it down about daylight. 'Cause me and my personal friends are celebrating. And with every round you fade more out of sight. I'm tired of moping, hoping, waiting on the telephone. I don't know by now that you ain't gonna come back home.
Come back home.
I'm going dancing, romancing. I'm gonna love every boy inside. I might worry tomorrow, but I'll paint the town tonight. I'm tired of moping, hoping, waiting on the telephone. I don't know by now that you ain't gonna come back home. I'm going dancing, romancing. I'm gonna love every boy inside. I might worry tomorrow, but I'll paint the town tonight. I might worry tomorrow, but I'll paint the town tonight.
And that's like Garen herself, just married recently too, and I wish herself and himself the very, very best. And she was singing great there last week down in the Millennium. And a night to remember, yes. So hello to everyone there. Hello to yourself now again. And on the phones today, we've got Carolyn, we've got Neil, Marlena, and we've got Matt. Matt's up there and he's singing and dancing like a good one. So they're all up there. Carolyn, Neil, Marlena, and Matt. And then with Mary Mac today, because Mary Mac's leaving the bus, then we've got Jackie Mac, Jackie McHugh.